The Atlanta skyline glittered in the bright morning sun, each glass tower catching the light as though competing for attention. Inside one of those towers, on the 32nd floor, Damian Cross adjusted the cufflinks on his tailored navy suit and studied his reflection in the window. At only 33, he had built Cross Properties into a real estate empire stretching across the city, his name synonymous with wealth, power, and ambition. The world saw him as unshakable, a man who never stumbled and apologized. Today was supposed to be another easy victory, just a podcast interview, another platform to project his flawless image. The studio had been set up inside his own office. Cameras pointed at him, lights softening the hard lines of his face. Tyler Grant, the eager young podcast host, fussed over his notes, glasses sliding down the bridge of his nose as he rehearsed his introduction. Damian lounged in his chair with the casual confidence of a man accustomed to control, his smile polished to perfection. He had spoken on dozens of platforms before, and each one added to Damian Cross's legend. This morning, he expected nothing different. Tyler began the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The little red light blinked, and the Success Blueprint podcast was live. "Welcome back to another episode," Tyler said brightly. "Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with one of Atlanta's most influential figures, a self-made millionaire who has reshaped the skyline, Damian Cross. Damian, thank you for joining us." Damian gave a practiced smile. "Always happy to share a little wisdom, Tyler." The questions began as expected. How had he started from nothing? What drove him to work 16-hour days? What advice did he have for aspiring entrepreneurs? Damian answered smoothly, his voice calm, deep, and deliberate. He knew how to tell his story. He had told it 100 times, about sleeping in his car in his early 20s, knocking on doors until someone finally gave him a chance, and closing his first big deal and never looking back. The audience loved the rags to riches narrative, and Damian knew it by heart. But then Tyler leaned forward, eyes glinting with the hunger of a journalist searching for something juicier. "You've conquered Atlanta's skyline, Damian. But what about your personal life? You are one of the city's most eligible bachelors. Surely the ladies must be lining up." Damian chuckled, leaning back as though amused by the idea. "I work 80 hours a week. That doesn't leave much time for dating. But when you do date," Tyler pressed, "what's your type? The people want to know." It was the kind of question Damian usually sidestepped with a laugh or a vague answer. But this morning, something in him wanted to tell the truth precisely as he thought. Maybe it was arrogance, the comfort of being in his office, or the intoxicating belief that he could say whatever he pleased and remain untouchable. He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Look, I know what I want. I like my women, and I like my buildings. Sleek, elegant, uncomplicated. Curvy black women just aren't my type. Too much attitude, too much drama. I like quiet, minimal, no distractions." Tyler's eyes widened behind his glasses, but he quickly forced a smile, trying to recover the rhythm. "Well, that's specific. Let's talk about your latest development project." Damian brushed off the moment with a shrug, certain it would disappear into the stream of his success story. The interview continued, harmless and ordinary. Tyler shook his hand nervously when the cameras shut off, but Damian barely noticed. He had already moved on to his next appointment. Jessica, his efficient assistant, approached with his schedule in hand. "That went well," Damian said. His tone suggested finality. Jessica hesitated. "Sir, your comment about your dating preferences is already spreading online." Damian waved a dismissive hand. Honesty never hurt anyone. People respect the truth. Jessica's eyes flicked nervously toward his phone on the desk. "Maybe check your notifications." Damian smirked, uninterested. By the afternoon, that smirk was gone. The clip had exploded across social media, millions of views. Boycott Cross was trending. Commentators dissected every word, activists called for apologies, and women's groups demanded accountability. Some defenders insisted he had the right to his preferences, but the outrage was louder, stronger, and growing by the hour. Damian scrolled through the endless feed of criticism, his jaw tightening. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. I answered honestly. Jessica shifted uneasily. Your mother called, twice. Damien groaned, already anticipating the scolding from Vivian Cross, the only person whose disappointment he feared. But there was something more pressing. The Wilson contract, worth tens of millions, was wavering. Their representatives sent carefully worded messages expressing concern about the public image. Damien had spent years building his empire with meticulous deals, calculated risks, and ruthless efficiency. To see it threatened by one offhand comment felt surreal, like a fortress cracking from the inside. Across town, another story unfolded in a cozy kitchen, smelling of cinnamon and vanilla. Selena Brooks slammed a ball of bread dough onto the counter, her dark eyes flashing with fury. "Did you hear what that arrogant Damien Cross said?" she demanded. Her best friend and business partner, Jasmine, chopped vegetables with deliberate force. "It's all over my feed. Curvy black women aren't his type. Said we're too much drama, too much attitude." Selena's lips curled in disgust. It was as if we'd all been waiting for his approval. Selena had spent years battling those same dismissive stereotypes. Growing up, she had learned to shrink herself, smooth her edges, and fit into a world that demanded women like her be quieter, smaller, and less noticeable. But she had fought her way free of those chains, had learned to love her natural curves, her crown of thick coils, her laughter that filled a room. From the ground up, she had built Divine Taste, her catering company, turning her grandmother's recipes into culinary art that Atlanta's elite couldn't get enough of. To hear Damien Cross casually dismiss women like her felt like a slap across every scar she had healed. Jasmine watched her friend with knowing eyes. "Don't let him get under your skin. His loss, Selena. You wouldn't date a shallow man like that anyway." Selena wiped flour from her hands, trying to breathe through the storm inside her. "Business is business. I refuse to let a man like him affect my peace." But her phone buzzed with an email, and when she read it, her heart sank. The lucrative birthday event she had booked for Saturday, which promised double her usual rate, was for Vivian Cross, Damien's mother. "Cancel it," Jasmine urged. Selena shook her head, though temptation pulled hard. "I can't. I've already hired staff, ordered supplies, and taken a deposit." "Business is business, remember?" Jasmine arched a brow. "You think he'll be there?" Selena closed her eyes briefly. "God, I hope not. If he is, I'll be professional. I have nothing to prove to him." Still, a knot twisted in her stomach as she kneaded the dough. Old insecurities whispered in the corners of her mind, voices she thought she had silenced. Saturday came, and Selena's team transformed the Cross Mansion into a vision of elegance. White flowers bloomed in polished vases, candlelight gleamed against crystal, and the air hummed with wealth and expectation. Selena wore a simple black dress that flattered her figure, her hair styled in a radiant halo around her face. She moved with quiet authority, her staff hanging on her every word. The dessert table was crowned by her signature peach cobbler, a dish born of her grandmother's love, the recipe that had earned her first catering job 5 years ago. Vivian Cross entered the room with gracious poise, her smile warm, her eyes sharp. "You must be Selena Brooks," she said, extending her hand. "Everything looks wonderful." Selena smiled, genuinely charmed. "Thank you, Mrs. Cross. Happy birthday. Please call me Vivian." They exchanged pleasantries, and Selena relaxed slightly. Vivian was nothing like her son. She radiated sincerity, curiosity, and a genuine appreciation for Selena's work. But then came the voice that made Selena's breath catch. "Mother, happy birthday!" Damien Cross walked into the room, gift box in hand. He kissed his mother's cheek, and his gaze landed on Selena. The room seemed to be still. For a moment, neither spoke nor moved. Damien had never seen a woman command attention so effortlessly. Her presence magnetic, her dignity unshakable. Selena, in turn, felt a surge of conflicting emotions: anger, disdain, and, much to her frustration, an involuntary flutter in her chest. Vivian introduced them, her tone bright. "Damien, this is Selena Brooks, our caterer tonight. Her food is divine." Damien extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you." Selena hesitated before taking it. "Mr. Cross." Their eyes locked, and in that instant, Damien felt a disorienting sensation, as if this woman, whom he had dismissed without ever knowing, could see right through the polished armor he wore. Selena pulled away smoothly. I should check on the main course. She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Damien uncharacteristically off balance. He followed a few minutes later, curiosity stronger than pride. "The food looks incredible," he said, standing at the threshold. "Do you have your own restaurant?" "Just my catering company," Selena replied, her tone professional, cool. "Divine taste." Damien nodded awkwardly, the confidence that carried him in boardrooms faltering in this small kitchen. "I'm impressed. My mother is very particular." Selena inclined her head. "Thank you." That was all she said, but the words carried the weight of dismissal. Damien lingered, unaccustomed to being the one left standing. The evening unfolded, and guests praised the food. Vivian glowed with gratitude, and Damien could not keep his eyes from following Selena. He watched the way she moved, the way she smiled at guests, the way her voice wrapped warmth around her descriptions of each dish. He had called women like her too much attitude, too much drama. Yet she carried herself with more composure and grace than anyone he had ever dated. Damien Cross felt uncertain of himself for the first time in years, unsettled in ways he could not explain. And across the room, Selena Brooks felt his gaze like heat on her skin. She reminded herself of every reason to despise him, every cruel word he had spoken into that microphone. But when their eyes met, something complicated stirred within her. A spark, a fire, one that promised not just conflict, but a story neither of them could walk away from. Morning broke over Atlanta with a fiery sunrise, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. Damien Cross sat in his penthouse, coffee untouched, phone buzzing relentlessly on the glass table beside him. He had not sliced into a shorter soundbite podcast clip, replayed across every platform. Influencers mocked his words, activists condemned them, and networks debated whether his empire should be boycotted. He had weathered storms before in business, but this one felt different. This one attacked not his balance sheets, but his character. Jessica entered the room, tablet in hand, her expression caught between professional calm and personal concern. "Damien, we lost another one. Horizon Group canceled its deal this morning. That's $5 million gone." Damien rubbed his temples. One comment. It was one comment. Jessica hesitated before responding. One comment that insulted millions of women. Not just women, but potential clients, employees, and allies. "You've built an empire on ambition, but underestimated how fragile reputation can be." Damien stood, restless, walking to the massive window overlooking the city. The skyline usually felt like his crown, but now it mocked him, cold and unyielding. "What's the plan, Jessica?" His voice carried its usual authority, but the edge of uncertainty was there. "Damage control," she answered. "The PR team wants a genuine apology, which is not your usual no-regrets routine." Damien scoffed. "I don't do fake apologies." "Then maybe," Jessica said carefully, "you should figure out if you're sorry." The words lingered, heavy. Damien had always prided himself on being unapologetic. Brutal honesty, he called it. But for the first time, he wondered if honesty was simply a shield for arrogance. Across town, Selena Brooks was just as sleepless. She had prepared for the upcoming gala, kneading dough, testing sauces, adjusting menus. The kitchen smelled of spices, sugar, and nervous energy. Her staff moved quickly under her sharp instructions, but her mind wandered back to the night at the Cross Mansion. She had expected Damien to be smug, dismissive, untouchable. Instead, she had seen flashes, something disarmed and uncertain. It unsettled her more than his arrogance ever could. Jasmine leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You're distracted." Selena shot her a look. "I'm working." "You're overworking," Jasmine countered. "Is this about him?" Selena froze, then forced a laugh. "Of course not." Jasmine smirked. "You hate him, but you keep thinking about him." Selena slammed a pot lid down a little more than necessary. "I don't hate him. I hate what he represents. Men who think their money makes their opinions sacred. Men who dismiss women like me without a second thought." Jasmine tilted her head. Then why does he get under your skin more than anyone else? Selena had no answer. By mid-afternoon, Damien sat at the head of a long conference table, his PR team surrounding him like vultures circling wounded prey. Charts and headlines projected on the wall told the same story: public outrage, plummeting approval, hemorrhaging contracts. Diane, the seasoned PR director, adjusted her glasses. "We need a sincere apology, Damien, on camera. Written statements won't cut it. And not a vague, 'I'm sorry if anyone was offended.' You need to own the harm." Damien leaned back, jaw tight. "I told the truth about my preferences. How is that harm?" Diane's tone sharpened. "Because you turned preferences into stereotypes. You didn't just say you like slim women. You dismissed curvy black women as too much attitude, too much drama. That is a direct insult to a demographic that makes up a considerable part of this city, this market, this culture." Damien opened his mouth to retort, but closed it again. He had no answer. Jessica slid her tablet across the table. "Wilson Properties officially canceled. That's 20 million lost." Silence fell. Damien felt the walls closing in. The empire he had built brick by brick now cracked under the weight of a few careless words. Diane's voice softened slightly. "We also need action. Partnering with Black-owned businesses, supporting women entrepreneurs, not as charity, but as proof that you are more than your words." Damien thought of Selena Brooks, of how she had commanded his mother's gala with quiet confidence, of the taste of that peach cobbler that had reminded him of something real, something warm. "Divine taste," he murmured. Diane perked up. "What is that?" "A catering company. Woman-owned, Black-owned. Exceptional quality. We could contract them for all our corporate events. That would send a strong message." The team murmured in agreement. Jessica studied him curiously. "Are you sure this isn't personal?" Damien ignored the question. Business is business. Selena stood over a tray of cooling pastry that evening when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Divine taste, this is Selena." The voice on the other end was smooth, deep, unmistakable. "Selena, this is Damien Cross." She nearly dropped the phone. "Mr. Cross, what can I do for you?" "I'd like to discuss a business opportunity," he said. "My company hosts numerous corporate events, and after experiencing your work at my mother's birthday, I want to offer Divine Taste an exclusive contract for the following year." Selena froze, suspicion flooding her. "That's quite an offer. Why now?" There was a pause. "Because your work deserves it. And," he added reluctantly, "because I want to do better." Selena's voice hardened. "This isn't about my food. This is about your image." Another pause, longer this time. "Can we meet in person? Lunch tomorrow. I'll explain everything." Against her better judgment, curiosity stirred. "Fine, 1 o'clock, Harvest Cafe." After she hung up, Jasmine appeared at her side, eyes wide. "Was that who I think it was?" Selena nodded grimly. "He wants to meet." Jasmine let out a low whistle. "Careful girl, he's not just playing with contracts. He's playing with fire." The next day, Harvest Cafe buzzed with lunchtime chatter, sunlight filtered through expansive windows, casting golden light on rustic wooden tables. Selena arrived early, wearing a vibrant wrap dress that celebrated her curves, her natural hair styled into a bold halo. She chose a corner table, arms folded, determination etched on her face. Damien arrived on time, dressed in dark jeans and a white button-down. Even casual, he carried the aura of wealth and control. But when he approached her table, his steps lacked their usual swagger. "Selena," he said, extending his hand. She shook it briefly. "Mr. Cross, call me Damien," he said as he sat. "Let's get to the point." Selena noted this sudden interest in my company coolly. "It's damage control, isn't it?" Damien studied her, then gave a reluctant nod. "Yes, partly. My PR team recommended it, but I chose you." Selena's brows lifted. "So, I'm supposed to be your token black woman to prove you're not prejudiced." Damien winced. "That's not how I see it." "That's exactly how it looks," she shot back. Damien leaned forward, his eyes unusually earnest. "I don't expect you to trust me, but I want to. I need to change. I can't undo what I said, but I can prove that I see value beyond the narrow world I was raised in." Selena saw not the unshakable man for the first time, but a man struggling against his pride and past. It unsettled her, but she kept her guard high. "I'll review your contract," she said, "with my lawyer, and if I agree, it will be strictly professional." Damien nodded, relief flickering across his face. "That's all I ask." As the waiter brought their food, the conversation shifted. Selena spoke of her grandmother's recipe of long nights in culinary school, of fighting for respect in an industry dominated by men who overlooked her. Damien listened intently, asking questions instead of offering advice. For once, he was not the center of the story. When lunch ended, Damien insisted on paying. "Consider it an apology," he said. Selena rose, gathering her things. "A contract won't erase what you said." "No," Damien admitted, "but maybe it can be the beginning of something different." Selena gave him a long, searching look before walking away, leaving Damien at the table, wondering for the first time in years if he could become a better man. Selena kneaded dough with fierce concentration, back in her kitchen that evening, Jasmine hovering nearby. "Well, how was it?" Jasmine asked. "Confusing," Selena admitted. "He was honest about the PR angle and seemed different, vulnerable even." Jasmine smirked. "Vulnerable millionaires? That's a new one." Selena shook her head, flour dusting her curls. "I don't trust him, but the contract could change everything for divine taste." Jasmine watched her friend wrestle with the choice, knowing the decision was about more than business. It was about wounds and pride, about history and change. And somewhere in the storm, it was about two people who never should have crossed paths, now drawn together by forces neither fully understood. For Damien, the storm of consequences was just beginning. For Selena, the storm tested whether she could stand firm in her truth. And for both, the storm would become the crucible that transformed them, one decision at a time. The Cross Mansion buzzed with quiet anticipation the evening of the charity gala. Server moved through the vast halls carrying polished trays. Decorators placed final touches on floral arrangements, and the kitchen hummed with the controlled chaos of preparation. Selena Brooks stood at the center of it all, her apron tied tight, her voice steady as she directed her team. The scent of rosemary and garlic mingled with the sweetness of peach cobbler cooling on the counter, filling the air with the warmth of tradition. She checked her watch. Guests would begin arriving in less than 2 hours. Everything needed to be perfect. The hospital fundraiser had been thrust upon her with short notice after Vivian Cross called in desperation, but Selena reluctantly agreed. Despite her complicated feelings toward the family, she respected Vivian and admired her dedication to the cause. Still, a part of her could not ignore the gnawing thought that Damien would be present, watching, perhaps even scheming. Her phone buzzed. A single message lit up the screen. "Reporting for duty." Selena frowned, confusion mixing with disbelief. Then the door opened and Damolf stepped into the kitchen, dressed in black trousers and a crisp white shirt. Not in a tailored suit. In his hand he carried an apron. She froze, nearly dropping the spoon she was holding. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. Damien smiled faintly, a touch of nervousness softening his usual confidence. "You told me I needed to prove it if I was serious about working with you, so here I am. Put me to work." Her staff stared, wide-eyed, whispers rippling through the kitchen. Selena narrowed her gaze. "This isn't a boardroom, Damien. You can't just walk in and expect everyone to cater to you." He shrugged, slipping the apron over his head. Then, "Treat me like one of them. Assign me a job." Selena almost laughed. It was absurd, but the challenge in his eyes sparked something in her. "Fine. Chop these vegetables into uniform slices. No shortcuts." She handed him a cutting board and a knife. He looked at the blade like a foreign object, then set to work. Within minutes, the slices were uneven, ragged, some too thick, and others nearly translucent. Selena sighed, stepping closer. "Watch." She guided his hand gently, showing him the rhythm of the knife, the steady pressure, the fluid motion. Damien followed, clumsy but determined. Sweat dotted his forehead, but he did not complain. For the next hour, Damien chopped, stirred, and arranged under Selina's instructions. He spilled flour, overpoured olive oil, and nearly dropped a tray of glasses, but he kept going, his polished demeanor replaced with something unfamiliar: humility. Selina found herself studying him, surprised by the effort the silence he maintained. He was used to commanding armies of employees, yet here he was, learning to fold napkins and garnish plates. "You're a fast learner," she admitted reluctantly, as he managed a passable bruschetta platter. Damien looked at her, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "I've always been good with my hands." Selina raised a brow. That sounded rehearsed. He flushed, realizing the implication. She shook her head, suppressing a smile. "Just keep arranging." When Vivian entered to check on progress, her eyes widened at seeing her son in an apron, sleeves rolled up, arranging appetizers carefully. "Damien, darling, what are you doing?" she asked, laughing. "Learning how the other half lives, mother," he replied dryly. "Selina's teaching me." Vivian's gaze slid to Selina, a knowing expression settling on her face. "Well, I think it's terrific. He could use a few lessons in humility." "Selina, you are a miracle worker." The gala began, and Damien surprised everyone by staying in the kitchen and serving alongside the staff. He carried trays into the ballroom, offered champagne gracefully, and cleared empty table plates. Guests raised eyebrows, some whispered in surprise, but Vivian beamed. Selina observed, waiting for him to slip into arrogance or complain about the work, but he never did. When one of her assistants fell ill and had to leave, Damien silently took over their tasks without hesitation. By the end of the evening, long after the last guest departed, the kitchen was a mess of dirty dishes and tired staff. Selina rolled up her sleeves to begin the final cleanup, only to find Damon scrubbing plates with sleeves at the sink. "You don't have to do that," she told him. He glanced over his shoulder, soap suds dripping from his hands. "I want to." She stared at him, genuinely unsettled. "You've never done this before, have you?" He chuckled. "Not once in my life. I've always had someone else do it." But tonight, he looked around the kitchen, at the tired staff sharing laughter over leftovers, at the satisfied smiles of her team, at the sense of accomplishment in the air. "Tonight, I understand what it means to work for something real." Selina felt something shift inside her. She had sworn to hate him, to dismiss him as nothing more than an arrogant millionaire, but watching him here, stripped of his armor, sleeves rolled, and hands raw from soap, she wondered if there was more to Damien Cross than the headline villain. "So," she said cautiously, "do you pass the test?" Damien set the plate down, drying his hands. "That's up to you." Selina hesitated, then nodded. "You did well. We can move forward. But this partnership is strictly professional." Damien's smile was small, genuine. "Understood." As the last tray was stacked and the kitchen quieted, Vivian appeared again. "Selina, everyone raved about the food. The hospital director wants your information for their next fundraiser." Selina's heart swelled with pride. "That's wonderful, Mrs. Cross." "Please," Vivian corrected warmly. "You're practically family already." Selina stiffened at the word but forced a smile. Damien, meanwhile, looked between his mother and Selina with an unreadable expression. Later, as Selina prepared to leave, he approached her at the back door. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for tonight, for giving me a chance." Selina met his gaze. "This was never about giving you a chance, Damien. It was about proving you could do more than talk." He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "Still, I'm grateful." On the drive home, Selina replayed the night in her mind. The sight of Damien chopping vegetables, the sincerity in his eyes when he admitted his inexperience, the unexpected warmth in Vivian's smile. It unsettled her. She had built strong walls around her heart, forged from years of rejection and prejudice. But Damien Cross had found the cracks, and through them seeped questions she was not ready to face. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Damien collapsed into a chair, exhausted but strangely satisfied. His phone buzzed with new crises. Another contract at risk, another headline dissecting his words, but for the first time in weeks, he ignored them. Instead, he thought of Selina Brooks, her fire, her command, her refusal to be impressed by his wealth. He had walked into her kitchen as a man on trial and walked out humbled, curious, and more alive than he had felt in years. Damien stared at his reflection in the window, the city glittering behind him. Who was he becoming? For so long he had been defined by money, by image, by the cold steel of skyscrapers. But tonight, amid flour, dishes, and laughter, he had glimpsed another version of himself, one that terrified him as much as it thrilled him. And as Selina drifted to sleep, her hands still smelling faintly of garlic and peach cobbler, she whispered a warning she was not sure she believed. "You will not fall for him. You cannot." Yet her heart, traitorous and restless, whispered back that the lesson had only just begun. The Monday morning sun streamed into the towering glass office of Cross Properties, but the warmth of daylight did little to ease the tension in the conference room. Damien Cross sat at the head of the table, his jaw tight, a cup of untouched coffee cooling beside his hand. Around him, the PR team, legal advisors, and senior executives shuffled papers and avoided his gaze. Jessica, ever composed, sat to his right with her tablet, her face pale from lack of sleep. "The numbers are worse than we feared, Diane," the PR director began grimly. Her voice was flat, stripped of optimism. "We have lost 3 major contracts since Friday: Horizon, Wilson, and now the Harrington deal. Combined value, close to 40 million. Damien's grip tightened on the edge of the table. 40 million because of a podcast. Diane gave a sharp shake of her head. "Not just a podcast, a cultural wildfire. Your comment insulted an entire demographic. That demographic influences clients, partners, and even politicians. The narrative is that you are arrogant, out of touch, and prejudiced." Damien leaned back, the leather chair creaking under his weight. He had spent a lifetime cultivating control, yet here control slipped through his fingers like water. He tried to summon the old bravado, the confidence that had carried him through every negotiation, but the weight of his words pressed heavier now than ever before. "And what's your solution? A public apology," Diane said without hesitation. "A full one. Live interview, not scripted, not deflected. You need to show humility." Damien's instinct flared. "I don't fake apologies." Diane arched a brow. "Is it fake if you mean it?" The room went silent. Damien stared at her, the question striking deeper than he expected. Did he mean it? He had always justified his preferences as truth, but the look on Selina's face at the gala when she watched him fumble through vegetable chopping, the quiet dignity she carried even when she dismissed him, haunted him. He had judged women like her without knowing them, and now he wondered if his words had come less from honesty and more from inherited prejudice. Jessica broke the silence with a quieter voice. "Damien, your empire is built on more than steel and glass. It is built on people's trust. Without that, none of this stands." Across town, Selina Brooks was facing her own storm. Divine Taste's phone had not stopped ringing since the gala. Some callers praised her food, others left cruel messages accusing her of selling out by working with the Cross family. Selina deleted voicemails with trembling hands, her pride warring with her fear. She had agreed to professionalism, nothing more. Yet already her name was being dragged into a narrative she had not chosen. Jasmine leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. "Girl, you are everywhere. Pictures of you at the gala, Damien in the kitchen, even a clip of him dropping a tray and laughing about it." Selina snatched the phone from her, heart pounding. "What do you mean by everywhere?" Jasmine showed her the trending tag. "Cross cooks. People are fascinated by Damien in an apron, and you standing over him like a drill sergeant. Some think it is hilarious, others think it is staged." Selina groaned, pressing her palms to her eyes. "This is precisely what I didn't want." Her staff glanced nervously, sensing her frustration. She straightened, forcing calm into her voice. "Enough gossip. Back to work. We have orders to fill." But inside she burned with the uncomfortable knowledge that her world was no longer private. That evening, Damien paced the length of his penthouse, city lights flickering beneath him. The silence was heavy, interrupted only by his phone buzzing with messages he refused to read. He stopped at his bar, pouring himself a drink, but left it untouched. His reflection in the glass seemed like a stranger. For years he had believed success excused everything. Wealth forgave arrogance, power masked flaws. But now the cracks in the facade gaped wider every day, threatening to swallow everything he had built. The next morning, he made a decision. He called Selena. She answered with clipped professionalism. Divine taste, Selena Brooks speaking. Selena, it's Damien. There was a pause, her silence pressing into his chest. What can I do for you, Mr. Cross? He took a breath. I want to meet, not for contracts, not for PR, just to talk. Selena's instinct screamed no. He was chaos, and she had fought too hard for peace. But another voice, quieter and more dangerous, whispered curiosity. Against her better judgment, she agreed. Noon, the cafe on Peachtree. When she arrived, Selena wore a fitted emerald dress, her curls framing her face, her chin lifted high. She exuded confidence, but inside she braced for battle. Damien was already there, dressed simply in a navy shirt, no tie, no armor of wealth. When he stood to greet her, she noticed the tired lines around his eyes, the slump in his shoulders. Thank you for coming, he said. She sat without shaking his hand. This had better be worth my time. He nodded. I won't waste it. I owe you an apology, a real one. Selena arched a brow. Go on. He looked directly at her, no cameras, no audience. What I said on that podcast was wrong. Not because it hurt my business, but because it was shallow and cruel. I judged women I had never even spoken to, dismissed them as a category instead of seeing them as people. Selena studied him, suspicion warring with the faint stirrings of something she did not want to name. And why should I believe you now? Damien leaned forward, his voice low, because I don't gain anything from saying this here. No cameras, no reporters. Just you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to prove I can change. Silence stretched between them. Outside, traffic roared. Inside, the air was taut with unspoken truths. Selena finally spoke. Words are easy, Damien. Change is harder. He nodded. Then let me show you. Let me earn it. She exhaled slowly, feeling the walls she had built tremble, though they did not fall. Professional partnership only, she reminded him. If I see one hint of this being used as PR, it's over. He met her gaze steadily. Agreed. When she left the cafe, Selena's steps were firm, but her heart was unsteady. She had expected arrogance, manipulation, and excuses. Instead, she had seen sincerity, even vulnerability. It unsettled her more than his wealth ever could. That night, Damien returned to his penthouse with a strange clarity. For years, he had believed his image was unbreakable. Now he understood the truth. The facade was already cracked. Perhaps it needed to shatter completely for something real to emerge. He stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars scattered at his feet. Selena was likely scrubbing pots, directing staff, and laughing with Jasmine elsewhere. She lived in a world so different from his, yet somehow she had become the mirror reflecting all he had refused to see. And as he pressed his palm to the cool glass, Damien Cross whispered a vow into the silence. He would not let arrogance be his legacy. Not anymore. The cracks in the facade would no longer terrify him. They would become the first step toward becoming more than a man defined by money and power. Something worthy of the woman who had already begun to change him. The city glimmered beneath a cold drizzle as Adrian Cross drove back from the community forum, his hands tightening on the wheel, his mind racing with every word he had spoken. He had exposed himself in a way he never had before, casting aside the armor of control that had always shielded him. For a man raised in the shadow of legacy, in a family where vulnerability was equated with weakness, the experience felt at once terrifying and liberating. Yet, as the applause of the Jefferson residents replayed in his mind, he knew it had not been about him. It had been about her. Maya Johnson had been the one to ignite that fire. Without her, he would still be designing lifeless towers and mistaking them for triumphs. When he finally reached his apartment, the silence pressed against him. The glass walls framed a view of the sound, fog curling over the water. He poured himself a drink but left it untouched, paced across the polished floor. Every memory of Maya sharpened with the night's events. the steadiness of her voice, the strength in her presence. The way she had looked at him afterward with the faintest flicker of something he could not yet name. Hope, perhaps. But he was too restless to sleep, too haunted by the awareness that proving himself to her would take more than one public gesture. Hours stretched into dawn, and still he did not rest. When he arrived at North Spire the next morning, his face betrayed the exhaustion. He caught a glimpse of himself in the mirrored elevator wall, his tie slightly askew, shadows beneath his eyes. It was an unfamiliar sight for a man who prided himself on immaculate conduct. The day began with another series of meetings with the Henderson Global team. Their skepticism after the gala had not abated, and Adrian knew they were testing him. In the boardroom, their questions were sharp, pointed, and probing for weakness. Why adjust the design now? One executive asks. Are these communities practical, just sentimental? Adrian straightened his shoulders. They are essential, he said firmly. A building that fails its people fails its purpose. If you are looking for a hollow monument, you have chosen the wrong firm. His words hung heavy in the air. The executives exchanged glances, and one of them scribbled a note. When the meeting ended, Victor Hale approached him privately. You are playing a dangerous game, Adrian, Victor warned. Henderson is our most lucrative client. They do not appreciate being challenged. Adrian met his gaze with quiet resolve. I would rather lose them than lose the soul of what we are building. Victor studied him for a long moment, then sighed. I hope you know what you are risking. By late afternoon, whispers had already spread through the office. Some admired Adrian's stance, others murmured about recklessness. Maya, meanwhile, remained composed and focused on her work. Yet Adrian noticed her glances toward him, small, fleeting, as though she were weighing what she had seen in Jefferson against the history she could not forget. That evening, as the office emptied, Adrian saw her still at her desk, reviewing drawings beneath the glow of a desk lamp. He hesitated at her door. May I? He asked softly. She looked up, surprised but not unwelcoming, and nodded. He stepped inside, the silence between them thick with everything unspoken. I know I cannot undo the past, he said. I cannot erase those words, but I want to be better. I want to prove that I can see, truly see, beyond the blindness I once carried. Maya set down her pen, her gaze steady. Do you know what it means to see truly, Adrian? It is not about admiration. It is not about saying the right things when the world is watching. It is about living differently when no one is there to applaud. Her words cut deep because they were true. He nodded slowly. Then give me the chance to live differently. Not for appearances, not for the firm, for us. Her eyes flickered at the word, as though the possibility of us both intrigued and frightened her. She stood, gathering her things. It is not my forgiveness you should seek first, she said quietly. It is your own. With that, she left him alone in the office, the echo of her words lingering long after her footsteps faded. That night became another long vigil for Adrian. Sleep eluded him as questions churned in his mind. What did it mean to forgive himself? Could he ever escape the shadow of his upbringing, the weight of careless privilege that had shaped him? He remembered conversations at the club, family dinners, and boardrooms where prejudices had been disguised as jokes, traditions, and unspoken rules. He had never challenged them, not until Maya. In the early hours, he drove aimlessly through the city, the streets slick with rain. He passed neighborhoods where his buildings loomed like cold guardians, towering structures that looked impressive from a distance but gave nothing to the people below. For the first time, he felt ashamed of them. He realized he had built monuments to himself, not sanctuaries for others, and the realization hollowed him. He parked near the Jefferson neighborhood, the site of the future Civic Center. The streets were quiet, storefronts shuttered, streetlights casting long pools of light. He walked alone, imagining the plaza Maya had sketched, the laughter of children on the steps, the hum of markets, and music filling the space. He saw not steel and glass but life, connection, warmth. For the first time, he understood what she had meant. The following morning, he returned to the office with a different energy. Exhaustion clung to him, but beneath it burned determination. He called his design team together and announced changes. We are reworking the Jefferson Civic Center. Every element will serve the community, not just the skyline. No one argued. They could feel the shift in him. When Maya arrived, she was surprised to see the new sketches spread across the table. She studied them in silence, her expression unreadable. At last, she looked at him. "You mean it," she said. "Yes," he replied, "I do." Her gaze softened, just slightly, and in that moment, Adrian felt a fragile thread of hope binding them again. That night, however, another call came, this time from his mother. "Adrian," Margaret Cross said, her voice cool as glass, "word has reached me that you are making reckless decisions. Clients are displeased. The Cross name is at stake. Do not forget who you are." Adrian closed his eyes. For the first time, he answered without hesitation. "I know exactly who I am, Mother, and for once, it is not who you raised me to be." The silence on the line was sharp, cutting, but he did not retreat. When he hung up, he felt both dread and freedom. He knew more storms were coming from clients, family, and the firm, but he also knew the path forward. As the city settled into another long night, Adrian stood at his apartment window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The man who had once built walls of steel and silence was gone. In his place stood a man determined to make something living, something true. And though Maya's forgiveness was not yet his, he knew the only way to earn it was to keep walking this path, no matter how long or dark the night became. The annual North Spire Gala was meant to be a celebration of triumph. It was the event where the city's elite gathered to toast success, where clients were courted and rivals subdued beneath the weight of grandeur. It had always been a predictable ride for Adrian Crossjewel, a stage where his polished charm and flawless image served as armor. Yet this year, as he stepped into the ballroom shimmering with crystal chandeliers and golden drapery, he felt the weight of shadows pressing down on him. The evening had barely begun, but whispers already curled through the room like smoke. Rumors of Henderson Global's dissatisfaction had reached eager ears, and more than one conversation faltered when Adrian passed. He carried himself with the same precision as always, his suit immaculate, his gaze steady. But he could feel the difference. Respect was still present, but it was edged with doubt. Maya Johnson was already there, radiant in emerald silk that caught the light with every movement. She stood surrounded by a circle of admirers, her laughter warm, her eyes alive. She did not seek attention, but attention gravitated toward her. Adrian could not look away. She was more than a presence in the room, she was the heartbeat of it. Yet the memory of Derek's careless words, the reminder of his own past arrogance, still stood like a wall between them. He went through the throng, offering polite nods and handshakes, though his focus remained fixed on her. At last, their paths crossed, and they stood face to face for a moment. "Good evening, Maya," he said quietly. She inclined her head with professional grace. "Good evening, Adrian." Her tone was calm and courteous but distant, and the space between them was vast despite their closeness. Before he could say more, Victor Hale called the room to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate North Spire's legacy and its future. It is my honor to present the design for the Jefferson Civic Center, led by our newest visionary, Maya Johnson." Applause swept the room as Maya stepped onto the stage. Adrian watched as she spoke with the same eloquence he had witnessed in Jefferson, her voice weaving together vision and purpose. She painted a picture of community, inclusion, and architecture that belonged to the wealthy and everyone. The audience leaned in, captivated. Adrian felt small for the first time in years, not diminished, but humbled by the realization that her vision was greater than any he had ever dared to pursue. Yet not everyone was moved. From his vantage point, Adrian caught the narrowed eyes of William Grafton, Henderson's representative, whispering to another executive. Their expressions were skeptical, their applause lukewarm. The message was clear. Henderson did not share Maya's vision. By extension, they did not share Adrian's newfound commitment to it. After the presentation, the ballroom erupted into conversation. Maya was pulled into a flurry of congratulations, her name on everyone's lips. Adrian lingered at the edge, torn between pride and fear. He knew what was coming. Henderson would not stay silent for long. He did not have to wait. An hour later, as guests mingled over champagne, Grafton approached him with cold precision. Mr. Cross, a word. Adrian followed him to a quieter corner, the music and laughter fading into the background. Henderson is reconsidering its partnership, Grafton said bluntly. Your firm has consistently delivered monuments of prestige. Now you propose a community playground. That is not what we pay for. Adrian's jaw tightened. The Civic Center is more than a building. It will define the future of Jefferson. It will define the future of this city. Grafton's eyes were icy. Henderson is not interested in sentimental experiments. Either you return to the North Spire we trusted, or we withdraw. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Adrian felt the old instinct stir, the impulse to compromise, preserve profit, and protect legacy at all costs. But then he thought of Ma, her steady eyes as she spoke of belonging, and the people in Jefferson applauding when he promised accountability. He could not retreat now. Then withdraw, he said quietly. Henderson deserves a firm that shares its vision. North Spire is no longer that firm. Grafton's expression hardened, but he did not argue. Very well. You will regret this. He left without another word. When Adrian returned to the ballroom, Victor Hale was waiting, his face pale with restrained fury. Do you understand what you have done? Henderson represents half of our projected revenue this year. Without them, the board will demand answers. Adrian met his gaze unflinching. Then I will give them answers. I will not betray what we have built with Maya. Victor stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. You are either the bravest man in this room, or the most reckless. Time will tell which. As the night wore on, Adrian's isolation grew. Conversations dimmed when he approached, clients avoided his eyes, and whispers spread faster than champagne. Yet, through it all, Maya remained a steady presence. She left the room respectfully, offering smiles and thanks, never faltering. But when her gaze brushed over him, he thought he saw something different, something not quite forgiveness, but recognition of his stand. Near midnight, as the gala thinned, Adrian stepped onto the balcony for air. The city stretched below, its lights blurred by mist. He felt the weight of what he had sacrificed, the enormity of what lay ahead. The Henderson withdrawal would shake North Spire to its core. The board would call for his head. His mother would unleash her disapproval with all the force of tradition. Yet for the first time in his career, Adrian did not feel hollow. He felt alive. Footsteps sounded behind him. Maya joined him on the balcony, her gown catching the faint glow of the city lights. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the night air cool against their skin. You turned down Henderson, she said finally. It was not a question. Yes, Adrian replied. I will not build empty towers anymore. She studied him, her eyes searching. Do you know what that choice means? I do, he said. It means loss. It means struggle. But it also means truth. She looked away, her gaze sweeping over the city. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. People rarely choose truth when power is on the line. Perhaps you are not the man I thought you were. Adrian's chest tightened. Then let me prove that to you, every day, until there is no doubt. She did not answer, but the silence between them was different now. Not cold, not final. It was a silence alive with possibility. Adrian remained when she left the balcony, the city stretching before him. The night was still heavy with shadows, but somewhere beyond the mist, a faint light stirred. It was fragile, uncertain, but it was enough to guide him forward. For the first time, Adrian understood that this battle was not about clients, contracts, or even reputation. It was about building something greater than himself, something that could outlast towers of steel and legacies of power. And in that realization, Adrian Cross felt the first true glimmer of redemption amidst the gala of shadows. The weeks that followed carried the weight of unfinished conversations. Selena's world thrived on the surface. Divine Taste had never been busier. Her staff expanded, new contracts poured in. But inside, she felt suspended in a limbo she could not escape. Every time she looked at her grandmother's recipe, and she kneaded dough or stirred sauces, Damien's shadow seemed to rise behind her, whispering of the night he had worked in her kitchen with sleeves rolled up and eyes stripped bare of arrogance. She tried to shake him from her heart. Work harder, Jasmine urged. Take a vacation, friends suggested. But Selena knew the truth. She could outrun paparazzi, dismiss articles, bury herself in catering orders, but she could not outrun the small ember of connection that still glowed in her chest. It was infuriating. She had sworn she was done with him, yet her heart had not received the same memo. Damien, meanwhile, lived a life unfamiliar to him. The empire of cross properties continued to function, though contracts were slower and investors were cautious. He delegated more than ever, trusting others to hold the structure he had once ruled with an iron grip. Instead, he spent his time in places where no cameras followed: youth centers, shelters, community kitchens. He painted walls with chipped brushes, served soup in cracked bowls, and listened to long-ignored voices. The world had judged him unrepentant, irredeemable, a man defined forever by one careless remark. But here, among people with nothing to gain from him, he found clarity. He was learning, painfully, that redemption was not an act of spectacle, but of repetition. It was not one grand gesture, but 1,000 quiet ones. He carried crates of food, swept floors, and washed dishes. Slowly, those around him stopped seeing the millionaire. They saw only a man trying. Yet silence greeted him every night when he returned to his penthouse. He would pour a glass of water, sit at the window, and imagine what it would feel like to share the view with Selena. He wondered if she laughed in her kitchen that day, if her hair still carried the scent of cinnamon, if she had read his letter more than once. Vivian noticed the change in her son. She would visit the mansion, watch him pack boxes for the shelters, and listen to his plans for supporting local entrepreneurs. There was pride in her eyes, but also sadness. She saw the hollowness when his gaze drifted toward the horizon. She knew what he missed. One evening, unable to bear his isolation, she spoke. "Damien, you can build 1,000 houses for others, but what of your heart?" He looked away. "My heart is not welcome where it belongs." Vivian reached for his hand. "Perhaps, but if you let silence be the last word, you'll never know if the door was truly closed." Selena tried to find peace in her own way. She taught her staff new recipes, spent evenings experimenting with flavors in solitude, and visited her grandmother's grave on Sundays seeking guidance. One crisp morning, she laid flowers on the headstone and whispered, "What do I do, Grandma? He hurt me, but he is not the same man anymore. I see it. I feel it, and I hate that I still care." As if in answer, her phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. Vivian Cross had been admitted after fainting during a charity meeting. Selena's breath caught. Her first instinct was to rush there, but she hesitated, gripping the phone tightly. It would mean seeing Damien again. It would mean stepping into the storm she had fought to escape. By afternoon, her decision was made. She walked into Atlanta Memorial's sterile halls carrying a basket of soup and bread, her heart pounding with every step. The older woman's face lit up instantly when she entered Vivian's room. "Selena, my dear, you shouldn't have come all this way." Selena set the basket down gently. "I heard. I wanted to make sure you were all right." Damien was there too, standing near the window. His eyes widened when he saw her, vulnerability flashing across his features. He started to speak, but Selena's gaze silenced him. She turned her attention to Vivian, spooning soup into a bowl and coaxing her to eat. Later, when Vivian drifted to sleep, Damien approached quietly. His voice was low, almost fragile. "Thank you for coming." Selena kept her arms folded, her stance guarded. "I came for her, not for you." "I know." He hesitated, then added, "But seeing you here feels like breathing after holding my breath too long." Selena turned sharply toward him, anger rising. "You don't get to say things like that, not after everything." Damien nodded, accepting her fury. "You're right, I don't deserve it. But I need you to know I've been trying. Not for the press, not for investors, for me. For the man I should have been long ago." Her heart twisted at his sincerity, but she forced steel into her voice. "Trying doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't rebuild trust overnight." Damien looked at her then, eyes raw, stripped of defenses. "I don't expect overnight. I only ask for the chance to prove that the man you saw glimpses of, The one in your kitchen, the one who listened instead of commanding. That man is real. Silence stretched between them, thick and trembling. Selena finally whispered, "Words are easy." Damien's voice steadied. "Then let me show you, one action at a time." Over the next week, Selena visited Vivian daily, and every day Damien was there too. He never pushed, never demanded her attention, but quietly made himself useful, fluffing pillows, fetching water, sitting with his mother while Selena ran errands. It was infuriating to Selena how natural it began to feel, how their silences softened into something less brittle. One evening, as they walked out of the hospital together, Damien broke the quiet. "There's a building on Oran Avenue. The old bakery has been empty for years. I bought it." Selena frowned, suspicion flashing. "Another PR stunt?" He shook his head quickly. "No press, no headlines. I bought it to give it to you." She stopped in her tracks. "What?" He met her gaze, earnest. "You once told me your dream was to teach kids to cook, to give them the chance you never had. That building is perfect for it. Classrooms, kitchen space, and even a garden in the back. It's yours if you want it." Selena's heart pounded. Part of her wanted to reject it outright, to accuse him of manipulation. But another part, the part that remembered her grandmother's dream for her, ached with possibility. "Why?" she asked, softly. "Why would you do this?" Damien took a breath. "Because it's the first time I've wanted to build something that isn't about me. It's about you. And the lives you'll change." Tears stung Selena's eyes, but she forced her voice steady. "I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can ever love you again." Damien nodded, his expression steady despite the ache in his eyes. "Then don't. Not yet. Just take the building. Let it be about your dream, not about us." Selena turned away, struggling against the flood of emotions. She walked into the night without answering, her footsteps echoing against the pavement. But that night, as she lay awake, her mind filled with images of classrooms filled with children learning recipes, laughter, hope, and legacy. And though she hated herself for it, her mind also filled with the memory of Damien's voice, low, earnest, unguarded, telling her he wanted to build something that wasn't about him. At the same time, Damien sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the deed papers on his desk. He had given away buildings before and made donations in the millions, but never had his chest felt this tight, this uncertain. For the first time, he was building without knowing if he would be allowed to share in the result. The city outside pulsed with life, but Damien and Selena stood at the edge of a decision that could alter everything. One teetered on the brink of redemption, the other on the verge of forgiveness. Neither knew if they would fall or if they would find each other in the middle. The bakery on Oran Avenue stood like a relic of another time, its faded brick facade weathered by decades of neglect. Selena stood on the cracked sidewalk staring at the building Damien had signed over to her. A set of heavy keys rested in her palm, their cold metal pressing into her skin like a question she was not ready to answer. Jasmine hovered beside her, wide-eyed with disbelief. "Girl, this is not just a gift. This is an empire seed. You could build your academy right here." Selena shook her head, torn between awe and suspicion. "Nothing is free, Jazz, not from him." Jasmine crossed her arms. "You saw the papers, no hidden clauses, no publicity stunt, just keys. He may be trying." Selena's chest tightened as she looked up at the faded bakery sign. She could almost see her grandmother smiling, her voice echoing from the past. "Food is love, Selena. Teach them to make it, and they will never starve." That night she walked through the empty rooms alone, dust swirling in the golden light from a street lamp. Her footsteps echoed on the worn tile floor, and she imagined the sound of laughter, knives chopping, and ovens humming. A vision unfurled before her, so vivid it made her throat ache. Rows of young people learning, creating, finding purpose in the kitchen, the way she had. And yet, Damien's face intruded into the vision, his eyes raw with sincerity, his words steady as he said, "It's about you, not me." She clenched the keys in her hand until her knuckles whitened. Could she believe him? Could she risk building her dream on a foundation offered by a man who had once humiliated her before the world? Meanwhile, Damien faced his own fire of doubt. Though he had handed her the building, uncertainty gnawed at him like a relentless tide. He had done the right thing, he told himself. It was not a bribe or manipulation. Yet fear whispered that she might never accept it, that she would see only another attempt at control. He painted murals with the children at the youth center, their laughter filling the halls. One boy tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Cross, are you really a millionaire?" Damien smiled faintly. "I used to think that was all I was. Now I'm just a man trying to do better." The boy grinned, satisfied with the answer, but Damien's heart twisted. He had built towers that touched the sky, yet all his wealth felt hollow compared to the fragile hope that Selena might one day believe in him again. Days passed with no word from her. Each morning he checked his phone, half dreading, half praying for a message. When none came, he poured himself deeper into work at the community centers, refusing to let despair paralyze him. Redemption, he reminded himself, was not owed, it had to be earned even if forgiveness never followed. Selena's silence was not indifference but conflict. She spent long nights at the bakery, cleaning the dust, sketching plans, imagining rows of gleaming countertops and bright-eyed students. Jasmine urged her to move forward. "This is bigger than your heartbreak, Selena. This is legacy." But Selena's fear whispered just as loudly. What if accepting his gift chained her to him again? What if the world painted her as nothing more than the woman he saved to save himself? One evening, she sat on the bakery's floor with her grandmother's recipe book open across her knees. Her fingers traced the worn pages, pausing at a note in the margin. "Love is the ingredient no one can fake." She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Damien had faked nothing in those last words to her. But love, she reminded herself bitterly, was not enough when trust lay in ashes. The fire of doubt burned hotter when the press caught wind of the deed. A local business journal ran a short article about the mysterious property transfer from Cross Properties to Divine Taste. Rumors swirled. Was it a bribe? A partnership? A scandal cover? Paparazzi snapped photos of Selena outside the bakery, their questions sharp and cruel. "Did you forgive him? Are you his new project? Is this your price?" Selena's stomach twisted as she faced the cameras, her silence fueling the frenzy. She collapsed against the counter in the kitchen, shaking with anger. Jasmine tried to soothe her, but Selena pushed away. "This is precisely why I cannot trust him. Even when he means well, the world twists it into another headline." Damien read the article too, his jaw tight with fury. He confronted his lawyers, demanding to know who leaked the deed. They swore it had not come from them. Diane's name surfaced again, whispers that she had retained connections eager to tarnish him. But it was too late. The damage was done. The world had taken a quiet gesture and turned it into another storm. Desperate to set the record straight, Damien went to the bakery one evening, finding Selena scrubbing paint from the walls. She stiffened at his presence, her back rigid. "You shouldn't be here." He stepped carefully inside, his voice low. "I didn't leak it. I wanted it to be private." Selena's laugh was bitter. "Private? Nothing with you is private. The world knows before I do." Damien's expression cracked with pain. "I can't control the world, but I can control myself. And I promise you, Selena, this wasn't a stunt. It was a gift. For you, for your dream." She turned on him then, eyes blazing. "Do you know what it feels like to have every choice questioned, every accomplishment overshadowed by your name? To have people think I'm only here because you decided I was worthy?" His shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. "I never wanted to take that from you. I only wanted to give back what I had stolen." For a moment, silence hung between them, charged and trembling. Then Selena whispered, "Maybe the fire you lit in me is not trust, but doubt. Doubt that will follow me forever if I let you near." Damien swallowed hard, pain flickering in his gaze. "Then I'll stay away, if that's what it takes." He turned to leave, each step heavy, but her voice stopped him at the door. "I haven't decided yet." Damien froze, hope flickering faintly in the ashes. Over the next week, Selena continued working on the bakery, but doubt gnawed at her every move. When volunteers from the community offered to help, she hesitated, wondering if they had come because of them. When investors offered funding, she questioned their motives. The dream that had once shone so bright now flickered in uncertainty, clouded by the shadow of his name. One evening, Jasmine found her sitting on the bakery floor again, tears streaking her cheeks. "You can't let his mistakes steal your dream," Jasmine said softly. Selena looked up, her voice breaking. "But what if my dream is forever tied to him?" Jasmine knelt beside her, squeezing her hand. "Then you decide if that tie is a chain or a lifeline. Only you can choose." That night, Selena dreamed of fire. Flames consumed the bakery, her recipe book, her business, and her future. And standing in the middle was Damien reaching for her. She woke with a start, sweat slick on her skin, the keys cold in her fist. At that same hour, Damien stood in his penthouse staring at the city skyline. His phone lay on the table, a draft message unsent. It read, "I will wait for you as long as it takes." Instead, he deleted it, whispering into the silence, "Let her decide." The fire of doubt burned in them both, threatening to consume the fragile bridge between them. And yet beneath the flames, an ember still glowed, stubborn and unyielding, waiting for the moment when one dared to reach through the smoke and grasp the other's hand. The bakery's renovation moved forward in fits and starts. Selena hired contractors to repair the roof, replace the shattered windows, and strip away the rotting wood. Every day, she stood in the dust-filled rooms, trying to see beyond the brokenness to the academy she envisioned. Yet each stroke of progress only deepened the ache inside her. The dream she had carried since childhood was finally within reach, yet it felt built on uncertain ground. She saw more than bricks and beams when she walked through the corridors. She saw Damien's shadow in every corner, his presence clinging to the walls like paint that could not be scrubbed away. The world would never separate the bakery from his name. Even if she succeeded, they would say she had succeeded because of him. The thought gnawed at her, poisoning the joy of creation. One evening, she stayed late after the workers left, sweeping dust into piles as the last light of sunset streamed through the boarded windows. Her grandmother's recipe book sat on the counter, a silent companion. She opened it to the familiar notes, the flour smudges, the faded ink of a woman who had loved fiercely, and taught her to fight with flavor instead of fists. Tears blurred the page. "Grandma, I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." Her phone buzzed. Jasmine's name lit up the screen. Selena answered, her voice unsteady. "Jazz, I'm at the bakery. I don't know if I can do this." Jasmine's response was firm. "You can. You're letting him live in your head. This building is not about Damien. It's about you, about every kid walking through those doors. Stop giving him power he doesn't hold anymore." Selena closed her eyes, leaning against the counter. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it," Jasmine insisted. "The fire of doubt only wins if you feed it." Meanwhile, Damien stood before a mirror in his penthouse. He barely recognized the man staring back at him. The tailored suit still hung in his closet, but he wore plain shirts now, his hair unruly, his face lined with sleepless nights. He remembered when his reflection had been a source of pride, polished, controlled, untouchable. Now it mocked him. The millionaire was reduced to a man with empty hands and an aching heart. He slammed the bathroom light off and returned to the darkened living room. A newspaper spread open on the table to an article about the bakery renovations. Photos showed Selena in her work clothes, dust on her cheek, determination in her eyes. She looked radiant, alive, untouchable. The caption beneath read, "From millionaires scandal to culinary academy, Selena Clark builds a new future." Damien's jaw tightened. The world still tethered her name to his even when she tried to separate. He wanted to call her, to tell her she owed him nothing, that her light was hers alone. But he knew the words would sound hollow. She would never believe them until she believed them for herself. One night, Vivian summoned him to dinner at the mansion. She greeted him with warmth, but her eyes studied him closely. "Damien," she said gently, as they sat with wine and roasted lamb, "you've been living like a ghost." He pushed food around his plate, appetite absent. "I don't know how to be anything else anymore." She reached across the table, her touch steady. "Then stop trying to be what you were. Be what you are now. A man who can admit mistakes, a man who can choose truth." Damien let out a bitter laugh. "Truth doesn't rebuild trust. Truth doesn't make her forgive me. Vivian's gaze softened with sorrow. Maybe not, but truth can set you free even if she never comes back. The next day, Damien walked into the bakery unannounced. The workers eyed him curiously as he crossed the dusty floor toward Selena, who stood on a ladder painting the wall. She froze when she saw him, brush mid-stroke. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp, defensive. He raised his hands in surrender. "I'm not here to interfere. I just wanted to see." She climbed down, fury rising. "See what? That I'm building my dream in the rubble you left behind?" Damien's face tightened. "Number, that you're creating something more substantial than anything I've ever built." Selena's eyes blazed. "Stop with the speeches. I don't need your approval. I don't need your praise. What I needed was for you to respect me from the beginning. And you failed." Damien's shoulders sagged. "You're right. I failed. I shattered us before we ever began. But Selena, please believe me when I'm trying to pick up the pieces not to fix us, but to fix me." Her laugh was bitter, broken. "Does admitting that make it easier? Does it erase the headlines, the whispers, and how people now look at me?" He stepped closer, his voice rough. "Number, but maybe it shows you that I see what I did, that I carry it every day. I'd give anything to go back and hold my tongue before I said those words that destroyed everything." Selena's hands trembled, her anger colliding with the ache in her chest. "Get out, Damien, before I forget why I'm stronger without you." He hesitated, searching her face for any crack in the wall. When he found none, he turned and walked out, each step echoing like a hammer on his heart. Later that night, Selena sat alone in the bakery. The silence was heavy, pressing against her ribs. She thought about his face, about the rawness in his eyes when he admitted his failure. For the first time, she wondered if he was truly breaking, not for her, but for himself. The thought unsettled her more than his presence ever had. Across town, Damien returned to his penthouse and poured whiskey into a glass. He stared at the city skyline, the lights blurring through tears he refused to let fall. He had lost deals and fortunes before, but never like this. Never something that mattered beyond money. Standing naked in the ruins of his arrogance, he felt stripped of armor for the first time. Selena arrived at the bakery the next morning to find graffiti sprayed across the front door. Words in red paint screamed, "Bought, not earned. Damien's whore." She stood frozen, bile rising in her throat. Rage and shame flooded her veins, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. The press descended within hours, snapping photos of the vandalism, twisting it into headlines that spread like wildfire. Selena fought back tears as she addressed her staff, forcing strength into her voice. "We clean it up. We move forward." But when she returned home that night, she collapsed into sobs, her body shaking with the weight of it all. Damien saw the headlines too. His fury was volcanic, his fists clenched until blood seeped from his palms. He stormed into his office, demanding names, demanding to know who dared to touch her. Jessica tried to calm him. "Damien, you can't fight the whole world." He turned on her, eyes blazing. "Then let the world come. I will burn every tower I built if it keeps her safe." But deep down he knew safety was not something he could buy or guarantee. Trust was the only fortress she needed. He had shattered it with his words. That night, Damien stood again before the mirror, his reflection fractured into shards by the cracks of his own mistakes. He pressed a hand against the cold glass, whispering into the silence. "Who are you without the armor?" The mirror offered no answer. Only a man haunted by the reflection of what he had lost. Selena faced her reflection in the bakery window, the graffiti still faintly visible despite the scrubbing. She saw herself staring back, weary but unbroken. Shattered, yes, but still standing. And in that fractured reflection, she realized the truth. Damien was not the only one searching for redemption. She was too, redemption from the fear that his shadow would always define her. The fire of doubt still burned. The scars of betrayal still ached. But beneath the shattered reflections, something new was forming. Whether it was strength, forgiveness, or something else entirely, she did not yet know. All she knew was that the story was far from over. The bakery's transformation slowed in the following weeks. weighed down by the graffiti incident and the headlines that refused to die. Every step forward seemed to draw another storm, another cruel comment from strangers who thought they understood her life. Selena checked over her shoulder when she walked down the street, bracing against whispers in grocery stores and shutting off her phone to escape the endless notifications. Jasmine remained her anchor, firm. "You're not what they say," she reminded her daily. "You built this with your own hands, not his." But Selena could not shake the feeling that her every accomplishment carried his shadow, that the bakery was not hers alone but tethered forever to Damien's name. One evening, exhausted from scrubbing paint and reviewing budgets, Selena locked the bakery doors and leaned against the wall outside. The city hummed with life, traffic roaring, neon signs flickering, people rushing past with their own burdens. She clutched her grandmother's recipe book, whispering into the night, "I just want to be free." Meanwhile, Damien sat in the Cross Properties boardroom, the city skyline gleaming beyond the glass. His executives debated profits, market recovery, and new developments, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought of Selena standing alone before her dream, the graffiti staining her sanctuary, and her face caught between fury and grief when she told him to leave. Finally, he raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough." The executives looked startled. Damien's voice carried steel, but beneath it was something new, something raw. From this day forward, no project of Cross Properties will move ahead without a community initiative attached. Affordable housing, youth centers, and schools. Something real. His lawyers exchanged nervous glances. "Investors won't like this," one muttered. Damien's gaze hardened. "Then they can take their money elsewhere." His empire shifted from glass and steel to flesh and blood for the first time. It was not redemption, but it was a start. News of his announcement spread quickly, sparking debate across the city. Some applauded him for finally taking responsibility. Others sneered, calling it a stunt. Selena read the headlines with a knot in her stomach. She wanted to dismiss it as another calculated move, but the fire in his eyes the day he left the bakery haunted her. Could this be real? A week later, Vivian called Selena to invite her to dinner. Selena hesitated, wary of stepping once more into the orbit of Damien Cross, but respect for the older woman compelled her to accept. When she arrived at the mansion, Vivian greeted her warmly, ushering her into the candlelit dining room. Damien was there too. Selena stiffened, but Vivian's gentle voice softened the tension. "I asked you both here because enough is enough. This family has lived in chains for too long." Damien frowned. "Chains?" Vivian nodded, her gaze steady. "Chains of appearances, expectations, and fear. Your father left, Damien, and my grief became a prison for both of us. Your aunt's rules bound you in ways you didn't even see. And Selena, you carry chains too, the weight of his mistakes, the voices of strangers who don't know you." Selena lowered her eyes, her throat tight. Vivian reached across the table, her hands steady. "I am not asking you to forgive each other. I'm asking you both to break free." Silence followed, heavy and unyielding. Damien finally spoke, his voice low. "I've been chained my whole life to what others expected of me. I thought power was freedom, but it was a cage." He turned to Selena, eyes raw. "I don't want you to carry my chains too." Selena clenched her fists, tears threatening. "You shattered my trust. You made me a symbol I never asked to be." Damien's jaw tightened, but he did not defend himself. "I know. And if breaking my chains means setting you free from me forever, I'll do it." Vivian's voice was soft but firm. "Then do it, both of you." That night, Selena walked out of the mansion with her head spinning. Damien had not begged or manipulated. He had simply acknowledged what she already knew, that the chains binding them were too heavy to carry together until they broke apart. At the bakery, she threw herself into work with renewed determination. She organized community fundraisers, invited local schools to tour the site, and rallied volunteers to help paint murals on the walls. For the first time, she spoke publicly about her vision. "This place is not about my past. It's about the future, about giving every child a chance to taste possibilities." Her words struck a chord. Donations poured in, support grew, and for a moment, the whispers about Damien faded beneath the strength of her voice. Yet late at night, When the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, she still felt the chains tugging at her. Chains of memory, chains of fear, chains of the man she had not stopped missing despite everything. Damien, too, faced his chains. At Cross Properties, investors threatened withdrawal, stock prices wavered, and lawsuits loomed. His board demanded he retract his new initiatives. Instead, Damien stared them down with steady resolve. "Let them leave. I'd rather build something honest and small than rule a kingdom of lies." In the solitude of his penthouse, however, the chains clung tighter. He replayed Selina's words, her fury, sorrow, and silence. He had thought wealth was the heaviest burden he would ever carry, but now he knew the truth. The heaviest burden was losing her. Damien returned to the bakery one stormy evening, unable to bear the silence any longer. He stood outside in the rain, watching the glow of lights within, the silhouettes of volunteers painting walls. He did not enter, did not knock. He stood, letting the rain soak him as he whispered into the night, "Be free, Selina, even if it means without me." Inside, Selina paused mid-sentence, as if sensing something. She walked to the window, peering out into the storm. But when she looked, the street was empty, the rain washing everything clean. Weeks passed. The bakery bloomed into life, walls painted, ovens installed, tables polished. Children and families filled the space on opening day, laughter ringing against the high ceilings. Selina stood at the front, scissors in hand, cutting the ribbon with tears in her eyes. Her dream was absolute. The chains had loosened. Damien did not attend. He watched from a distance, a silent figure on the crowd's edge. His chest ached with pride and sorrow in equal measure. He wanted to step forward, to share the moment, but he stayed where he was, unseen. The chains around him rattled, but for the first time, he chose not to drag her down with them. That night, Selina stood in the bakery alone after everyone had left. She walked the halls, touching the counters, inhaling the scent of fresh bread. The chains still tugged, but they were lighter now. She realized with startling clarity that freedom did not mean forgetting Damien. It meant refusing to let his shadow define her light. Across town, Damien returned to his penthouse and stared at the skyline. He felt both liberated and broken. For once, he had given without expectation, loved without demand. The chains had not vanished, but they had cracked. Breaking the chains was not an end, it was a beginning. For Selina, for Damien, for the fragile thread that still connected them despite everything. Whether that thread would fray or hold, neither knew. But both understood that freedom was the first step toward whatever future awaited them. The weeks after the bakery's opening unfolded with a rhythm that should have soothed Selina, yet silence pressed heavier than noise. Divine taste flourished, the academy welcomed its first eager students, and families filled the kitchen with laughter and clattering pans. Still, when the evenings drew quiet and she walked the empty halls, a strange emptiness lingered like an echo that refused to fade. She imagined what Damien might have thought if he had seen the children cracking eggs with clumsy joy, or the teens who grinned with pride as they baked their first loaves of bread. Then she would shake the thought away, furious with herself. He had chosen absence. Or perhaps she had forced it. Either way, silence had become the wall between them. Jasmine noticed. One night as they closed the academy, she leaned against the counter, watching Selina scrub a spotless pot with unnecessary force. "You miss him." Selina froze, her shoulders tensing. "Don't," Jasmine crossed her arms. "You can lie to the press, volunteers, and even yourself, but not to me." Selina dropped the pot with a clatter, her eyes burning. "I miss the man in my kitchen, the one who tried, the one who listened. But how do I know that man wasn't just another mask?" Jasmine's expression softened. "Maybe you don't know. Perhaps you never will. But maybe that's not the point." Across the city, Damien buried himself in his new commitments. Cross Properties launched projects that stunned the market, low-income housing in neighborhoods once ignored, scholarships for culinary students, and partnerships with schools. The board called it reckless, investors called it foolish, but the communities called it hope. At night, though, silence gnawed at him. He would stand on his balcony, glass of water in hand, staring at the horizon where he knew the bakery stood. Sometimes he imagined he could hear faint laughter carried on the wind, her laughter, though he knew it was impossible. He had given her freedom, but in doing so, he had chained himself to solitude. One evening, Vivienne found him alone in the study, papers scattered across the desk. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch grounding. "You've changed, Damien." He gave a humorless smile. Changed into what? A man with less money and— Damien pushed Cross Properties further toward rebuilding trust with communities. Yet at night, both lay awake, haunted by memories of each other. It was a chance encounter that shattered the silence. Selena had agreed to cater a charity gala for the city's youth programs, one her academy now partnered with. The night glittered with chandeliers and gowns, tables laden with food crafted by her students under her supervision. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, smiling at donors, reassuring her students, projecting strength. And then she saw him. Damien stood across the ballroom, dressed in a dark suit, speaking with city officials. He looked different, not polished and untouchable, but grounded, almost weary. Yet the world seemed still when his eyes found hers across the room. The silence that had stretched for weeks condensed into that single moment. Selena's breath caught, her heart thundering. She turned away quickly, busying herself with the buffet, but every nerve in her body screamed his presence. She could feel him moving closer, like gravity pulling her unwillingly into orbit. Damien approached slowly, unsure if she would flee. He stopped a few feet away, his voice low, careful. "Selena," she straightened, steel in her posture, but her voice betrayed the tremor in her chest. Damien, for a moment, neither spoke. The noise of the gala swirled around them. Laughter, clinking glasses, speeches echoing from the stage. Yet between them there was only silence, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Damien broke it. "I wasn't going to come tonight. I thought it would hurt you more to see me." Selena's gaze flickered to his. "Then why did you?" "Because I wanted to see what you built, and it's beautiful." Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to weep, to laugh bitterly. Instead, she said quietly, "It's mine, not yours." He nodded quickly. "I know, and that's what makes it beautiful." Their eyes locked, raw and unguarded, before a voice interrupted, pulling Selena away to tend to a guest. Damien watched her retreat, his heart aching. The silence had broken, but the distance remained. After the gala, Selena walked home alone, her heels clicking on the pavement. The city was quiet, but her mind was loud. Seeing him again had reopened wounds she had tried to bury, but also stirred something she could not name. She hated that part of her still longed for him. Damien returned to his penthouse, standing once more before the window. He had seen her strength, her radiance, her independence, and it had reminded him of the truth he had always known but never admitted. She did not need him. He needed her. Days later, Selena found herself walking through the bakery with her students, guiding them through a lesson on bread making. She watched their hands knead dough, their laughter filling the air, and felt pride swell in her chest. This was her purpose, her legacy. Yet when the laughter faded into quiet, she felt the silence again, sharp and unrelenting. She retreated to her office, opening the drawer where Damien's letter still lay. She reread it, the words scrawled in his hand. "If you never see me again, know that you changed me." Her tears fell onto the page. She whispered into the empty room, "You changed me too." At that same hour, Damien was in a boardroom announcing another community initiative. His voice steady, his gaze determined. The press questioned his motives, the board grumbled, but he did not falter. When asked what had inspired the shift, he said simply, "Someone once showed me that life is more than what you build for yourself." The silence between them lingered, but it was no longer empty. It was full of memories, regrets, and hope not yet extinguished. Both knew the silence could not last forever. It would either break them apart completely or draw them back together. Selena lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Damien's face burned into her thoughts. Across the city, Damien sat at his window staring at the horizon, her laughter still echoing in his ears. The silence between them had become unbearable. Something had to give, and soon it would. The silence between them could not hold forever. It bent, stretched, and ached until the day came when it finally shattered. It began with the academy, One late afternoon, as Selena dismissed her students after another lively class, she noticed a small group of reporters clustered outside the bakery. Their questions flew fast, their cameras flashing. "Selena Clark, how does running a school in a building bought by Damian Cross feel? Are the two of you secretly back together? Is this all part of his redemption arc?" Selena held her head high, ushering the children out a side door to protect them from the chaos. But inside her chest, rage and exhaustion boiled. She had worked tirelessly to carve her dream into reality, and still the world reduced her to his shadow. When the reporters finally left, she locked the doors and sank onto the counter, her grandmother's recipe book beside her, tears slipping silently down her face. Later that evening, Jasmine found her still sitting there, shoulders shaking. Selena whispered hoarsely, "I can't keep living like this. No matter what I do, it comes back to him." Jasmine crouched in front of her, eyes steady. "Then maybe it's time to face him. Not the Damian the world talks about, the Damian you saw when the walls fell." Selena wiped her eyes, heart pounding. Facing him meant reopening wounds she had barely kept stitched. But maybe Jasmine was right. Freedom did not come from silence, but from confrontation. Meanwhile, Damian fought his own battles. His initiatives had won praise from communities, but sparked rebellion among investors. Lawsuits threatened, stock prices dipped. The board demanded his resignation, whispering that he had grown weak. Damian stood before them, unflinching. "I built this empire. If you want it without me, take it. But I will not chain myself again to a kingdom of lies." He walked out, the boardroom door slamming behind him, echoing like a final break. For the first time, Damian was no longer the ruler of Cross Properties. He was simply a man, stripped of empire, carrying only the weight of his choices. That night, he returned to his penthouse, pouring whiskey into a glass he did not drink. He stood at the window, the city sprawling beneath him, feeling liberated and hollow. He had broken his chains, but without Selena, freedom felt like exile. Selena arrived at the bakery early the next morning, but the streets were still quiet. She unlocked the door and walked through the sunlit halls, touching the counters, breathing in the scent of yeast and flour. She whispered into the space, "Grandma, what do I do?" As if in answer, the door opened behind her. Footsteps echoed across the floor. She turned sharply, and there he was. Damian stood in the doorway, unshaven, weary, but his eyes burned with something steady, something true. He raised his hand slowly, as if approaching a wild creature he feared might flee. Selena, her breath caught, anger and longing colliding in her chest. "What are you doing here?" He took a step closer, his voice raw. "I lost everything yesterday. The board forced me out. The empire is gone." Her eyes narrowed. "And why should I care? Losing it showed me the truth. I never wanted power, I wanted purpose. And I found it in you, not in skyscrapers or contracts." The words hung between them, trembling with sincerity. Selena's chest ached, her defenses crumbling and rebuilding all at once. She shook her head fiercely. "Words are easy, Damian. You've always had words." Damian's voice steadied, strong despite the crack of emotion in it. "Then let me show you." He pulled from his jacket a crumpled envelope and handed it to her. Selena hesitated, then opened it. Inside was the deed to the bakery, signed entirely over to her name. Every tie severed, no conditions. Her hands shook as she read. "It's yours, entirely, no shadows, no chains. Whether you hate me forever or not, I wanted you free." Tears blurred her vision. She wanted to scream, throw the paper in his face, and demand why he had not done this sooner. Instead, she whispered, "Why?" His eyes met hers, unflinching. "Love is not a possession, it's giving, even when you get nothing in return." Silence filled the bakery, heavy and trembling. Selena's heart pounded, her defenses faltering. She searched his face for arrogance, calculation, and the masks he had once worn. She found none. Only a man lay bare, stripped of everything but truth. Slowly, she set the deed on the counter and stepped closer. "You broke me, Damian. You made me doubt myself, doubt everything." He nodded, pain flickering in his eyes. "I know, and I'll carry that guilt until my last breath." Her voice cracked. "Then why can't I stop missing you?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, raw and trembling. Damien's breath caught, his hands shaking at his sides. Because we were never finished, Selena. Because beneath the anger and doubt, we are still us. She closed her eyes, tears spilling freely, and when she opened them, she stepped into his arms. For a long moment, they held each other, the walls they had built crumbling around them. No cameras, no contracts, no empires. Just two people, scarred but still standing, clinging to the fragile hope that love could rise from ashes. Later, they sat together on the bakery floor, backs against the counter, the city's golden morning light streaming through the windows. Damien spoke quietly, his hand brushing hers. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever deserve you." Selena leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "Then stop trying to deserve me. Just be real. Just be here." And for the first time, Damien felt peace. The bakery flourished, the academy becoming a beacon of hope for the city. Children filled its halls with laughter, families found joy in shared meals, and Selena's dream became reality. Damien remained by her side, not as a savior or a shadow, but as a man who had finally learned to build something honest. The press whispered, the world speculated, but Selena no longer cared. She had her dream, students, and the man who had broken his chains. Damien no longer cared for empires. He had found a legacy greater than steel and glass. Together, they stood in the bakery one evening, watching students clean up after a long day. Selena smiled, her hand brushing Damien's. He looked at her, eyes steady, and whispered, "The walls are gone." She squeezed his hand, her heart steady at last. "Then let's build without them." And as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold, Selena Clark and Damien Cross stepped into a future not defined by scandal or shadows, but by the love and truth that had survived the storm when the walls finally fell.